3 words from a dying grandmother stopped Oprah Winfrey cold and changed her show forever. What started as a regular interview became the most emotional moment in talk show history when Margaret revealed what happened in that hospital room. Oprah had interviewed thousands of guests over her legendary career, but something about Margaret Thompson felt different from the moment she walked onto the stage. At 78, Margaret moved with deliberate care, each step measured and purposeful, her weathered hand instinctively resting over her heart as she settled into the familiar burgundy chair. There was a quiet strength in her posture, an inner radiance that seemed to illuminate her gentle features. The studio audience offered polite applause, unaware they were about to witness something extraordinary that would challenge everything they believed about the mysteries of human connection. "Margaret, thank you for being here today," Oprah began, her voice carrying that familiar warmth that had comforted millions. "You've been through quite a journey." Margaret's eyes, bright despite her age, met Oprah's directly. "I have, Oprah, but the real journey began when I died." The studio fell silent. Oprah, who had mastered the art of conversation over 4 decades, found herself leaning forward, completely captivated. 6 months earlier, Margaret Thompson had been a vibrant woman who tended her prized rose garden every morning at sunrise, the dew still clinging to the petals as she whispered encouraging words to each bloom. She baked chocolate chip cookies for her 5 grandchildren every Sunday, filling her modest kitchen with laughter and the warm scent of vanilla. Her hands, strong from decades of nurturing, had never trembled with uncertainty. She had never spent a single night in a hospital, priding herself on her robust health and independent spirit. But that seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning in March shattered her predictable world, when her heart simply stopped working. "The doctors called it sudden cardiac failure," Margaret explained, her voice steady but soft. "One moment I was watering my roses, and the next moment I was looking down at my own body on the kitchen floor." Oprah's expression shifted from professional interest to genuine concern. This wasn't the typical near-death experience story she'd heard before. There was something in Margaret's tone, a certainty that commanded attention. "I was clinically dead for 4 minutes, Margaret continued. "When they revived me at the hospital, the cardiologist told my family I had maybe 48 hours. My heart was too damaged. There was nothing they could do." The camera captured every nuance of Margaret's face as she paused, her hand moving to touch something beneath her sweater. But sometimes, Oprah, when we think the story is ending, it's actually just beginning. What happened next would challenge everything Margaret thought she knew about life, death, and the mysterious connections that bind us all together. Dr. Sarah Chen, the cardiac surgeon at St. Mary's Hospital, had delivered this kind of devastating news hundreds of times. Terminal heart failure at 78 usually meant comfort care and saying goodbye, but something about Margaret's case gnawed at her professional instincts. "The thing about hearts," Dr. Chen had told Margaret's family that first night, "is that they're more than just organs. They carry memory, emotion, even personality traits that science is only beginning to understand." Margaret's daughter Jennifer, a nurse herself, had asked the question that changed everything. "What about a transplant?" The silence that followed was deafening. At 78, Margaret was considered too old for the transplant list. The organs were scarce, the surgery risky, and the recovery brutal. But Dr. Chen found herself saying something she'd never said before to a family facing this situation. There might be a way. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in Cincinnati, 25-year-old Emily Rodriguez was celebrating her engagement to her college sweetheart, Michael, surrounded by friends and family, who adored her infectious laugh and generous spirit. She was a kindergarten teacher who poured her heart into helping children discover the magic of reading, spending her own money on colorful books and art supplies. On weekends, she volunteered at animal shelters, believing every creature deserved love and care. Emily had been an organ donor since she was 16, a decision she made after her beloved grandfather passed away, hoping that someday her choice might give someone else a chance at life. She believed in giving back, in the beautiful idea that love multiplies exponentially when shared freely with the world. On that same Tuesday night that Margaret lay dying, Emily was driving home from her engagement party when a drunk driver ran a red light. "I never got to meet Emily," Margaret told Oprah, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "But her mother, Maria, she was there the night I got the call. She wanted to meet the woman who would carry her daughter's heart. The studio audience was completely still now. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. Maria told me something that night that I'll never forget. Margaret continued. She said Emily had always believed that love was the only thing that could survive death, and she wanted to make sure Emily's love kept beating in someone who needed it. But the story Margaret was about to tell Oprah went far deeper than a successful transplant. What happened in the weeks following her surgery would shake the foundations of everything medical science understood about organ transplantation. The surgery took 11 grueling hours, with Dr. Chen leading a team of 12 specialists through one of the most complex procedures of her distinguished career. The operating room was filled with the steady rhythm of monitors, the quiet intensity of focused professionals, and the weight of two families' hopes hanging in the sterile air. Chen later described it as one of the most challenging procedures she had ever undertaken, not because of Margaret's advanced age, but because of what happened when Emily's young, strong heart first beat inside Margaret's chest. The moment was both routine and miraculous, a testament to the incredible advances of modern medicine and the mysterious forces that science couldn't yet explain. The moment they connected the final vessel, Margaret explained to Oprah, something extraordinary happened. I wasn't unconscious anymore, but I wasn't awake either. I was somewhere in between, and I could feel her. Feel who? Oprah asked, though she already knew the answer. Emily. I could feel her memories, her dreams, even her favorite song playing in my mind. I know it sounds impossible, but it was as real as you sitting here across from me right now. Margaret paused, looking directly into the camera. For 3 days after the surgery, I spoke fluent Spanish. I had never spoken a word of Spanish in my life, but Emily's mother was Mexican, and Emily was bilingual. The medical staff had been baffled. Patients sometimes experienced confusion after major surgery, but this was different. Margaret was coherent, alert, and somehow accessing memories that weren't her own. I knew things, Margaret told Oprah. I knew that Emily's favorite flowers were sunflowers, not roses. I knew she had a birthmark on her left shoulder shaped like a crescent moon. I knew she was afraid of thunderstorms, but loved the rain. Dr. Chen had documented everything, knowing the medical community would struggle to accept what she was witnessing, but there was no denying what was happening to Margaret Thompson. The most incredible part, Margaret continued, wasn't the memories or the language. It was the overwhelming sense of love I felt for people I had never met. Emily's love was so powerful, so pure, that it literally changed who I was. 6 weeks after the surgery, Margaret had insisted on meeting Emily's family. Maria Rodriguez had been hesitant at first. Seeing her daughter's heart beating in another woman's chest would be emotionally devastating. But something Margaret had said during a phone call changed her mind. I told Maria that I had dreamed about a little girl, with pigtails who called her mommy, and loved to paint pictures of butterflies, Margaret explained to Oprah. Maria started crying because Emily had been obsessed with butterflies since she was 3 years old. She painted them constantly. The meeting between Margaret and Maria had taken place in the hospital chapel exactly 2 months after the transplant, a sacred space where countless families had found solace in their darkest hours. The afternoon sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the simple wooden pews. Margaret had arrived early, nervous and emotional, clutching a bouquet of sunflowers she had somehow known to bring. When Maria entered, both women recognized something familiar in each other's eyes, the unmistakable bond of shared love for Emily. What happened there would bond these two women in a way that transcended loss and created something beautiful from unimaginable tragedy. When Maria first heard Emily's heart beating in my chest, Margaret told Oprah, her voice breaking slightly. She put her hand right here and whispered, "Mija, you're still helping people." And in that moment, I felt Emily's presence so strongly that I started singing. Singing? Oprah asked. Emily's favorite song, a Spanish lullaby her grandmother used to sing to her. I sang it perfectly, every word, though I had never heard it before in my life. Maria had collapsed in that chapel, overcome by the undeniable connection between her daughter's spirit and this remarkable woman who now carried Emily's heart. But the most extraordinary revelation was still to come. 3 months after the transplant, Margaret began experiencing vivid dreams about a place she had never been. Rolling hills covered in sunflowers, a small white house with blue shutters, and an old oak tree with a swing hanging from its branches. I dreamed about this place every night for weeks, Margaret told Oprah. It felt like home, but it wasn't my home. Finally, I described it to Maria during one of our weekly phone calls. Maria had gone silent on the other end of the line. The place Margaret described in perfect detail was Emily's childhood home in rural Ohio, where she had lived with her grandmother until she was 12. Maria drove me there last month, Margaret said, reaching into her purse and pulling out a photograph. This is me standing under Emily's favorite tree, the one she used to sit under to paint her butterfly pictures. The photograph showed Margaret standing beneath a massive oak tree, sunflowers stretching endlessly behind her, expression of pure peace on her face. But here's what still gives me chills, Margaret continued. When I touched that tree, I could feel every memory Emily had made there. Her first day of kindergarten, when she was scared and her grandmother told her to be brave like a butterfly. The day she decided to become a teacher because she wanted to help children learn to read. The morning she signed her organ donor card because she wanted to make sure her love could help someone even after she was gone. The studio audience was openly weeping now. Oprah herself had tears streaming down her face, but she pressed on with the question everyone was thinking. Margaret, what do you believe is happening to you? How do you explain these experiences? Margaret smiled, the kind of smile that comes from deep inner peace. I believe love is more powerful than we ever imagined. Emily's love was so strong, so pure, that it couldn't be contained by death. It lives on in every beat of this heart. She placed both hands over her chest. I'm not just carrying her heart, Oprah. I'm carrying her capacity to love, her dreams, her hope for the world. And that's changed everything about how I live my life. The transformation in Margaret's life had been nothing short of remarkable, touching every aspect of her daily existence. Before the transplant, she had been a quiet widow who lived modestly, rarely venturing beyond her small circle of longtime friends and devoted family members. Her world had been safe but limited, comfortable but constrained. But Emily's heart had awakened something profound within her, a zest for life, an openness to new experiences, and an unshakable faith in human goodness that seemed to radiate from her very core. I teach Spanish now at the senior center, Margaret told Oprah with a laugh that seemed to bubble up from her very soul. Can you believe that? At 78, I'm teaching a language I never spoke until Emily's heart started beating in my chest. My students call me Professora Margaret, and last week one of them told me I had given them the courage to finally call their estranged grandson in Mexico. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she continued, and every Sunday, instead of just baking cookies for my grandchildren, I bake for all the children in Emily's kindergarten class. We've started a tradition called Cookie Sundays where the children share stories about kindness they witnessed during the week. Margaret had also started a support group for transplant recipients and donor families, creating a space where these miraculous connections could be shared and honored. What Emily taught me, Margaret said, looking directly at Oprah, is that love really is eternal. It doesn't die with our bodies. It finds new ways to express itself. New hearts to beat through, new lives to touch. As the interview neared its end, Oprah asked the question that had been building throughout their conversation. What would you say to Emily if you could speak to her right now? Margaret closed her eyes, her hand resting over her heart. When she opened them, her voice was filled with gratitude and wonder. I would tell her that her love saved me in every way a person can be saved, not just physically but spiritually and emotionally. I would tell her that every day I wake up, I try to love the world the way she did, with open arms, endless compassion, and complete faith in the goodness of people. She paused, her voice strengthening. And I would tell her that her dream of making the world a little bit brighter, a little bit kinder, is living on through every beat of this heart she gave me. As Margaret spoke these final words with tears of gratitude flowing down her cheeks, something extraordinary happened that no one in the studio had anticipated. In the audience, sitting quietly in the third row and dabbing at her own tears, sat Maria Rodriguez. She had flown in from Cincinnati as Oprah's carefully planned surprise, wanting to witness Margaret tell Emily's story to the world. needing to see for herself the woman who carried her daughter's heart speak about love with such profound wisdom. The cameras caught Maria's emotional reaction as Margaret shared her message, and when Oprah revealed Maria's presence, the entire studio seemed to hold its breath before erupting in applause. The two women embraced as if they were long-lost family members finally reunited, their connection transcending words. But it was Maria's words that provided the perfect ending to this incredible story. Emily always said that love was the only miracle she believed in. Maria told the audience through her tears. Looking at Margaret, seeing how Emily's love transformed not just her life but the lives of everyone she touches, I know my daughter was right. Love is the greatest miracle of all. Margaret Thompson returned home that day with Emily's heart still beating strong in her chest, carrying with it the love, dreams, and limitless potential of a young woman whose legacy would now touch millions of lives through the simple act of sharing her story. And in senior centers across the country, grandmothers started learning Spanish, inspired by a 78-year-old woman who proved that it's never too late for love to change everything.